Hello, my name is Umar Faraz from the 11-Week Show. Today we're here at the historic Zoar Village. Let's go have a look, shall we?
Who are the Zoarites? The Zoarites were a religious group. They separated from the Lutheran Church in Germany, and because they separated, they called themselves separatists.
Located in eastern Ohio, about 2 hours south of Cleveland, lies the historic village of Zoar. This once thriving settlement of farmers and craftsmen has been reborn as a living museum. Interim site director Rebecca Lash tells us about the separatists and their early days.
The leader of the group was Joseph Weimiller, although there were other Germans that came later in the 1800s.
Zoar staff member Pamela McWhorter tells us about Weimiller's journey to the Buckeye State.
At the time, Ohio was a fairly new state, and they knew that there was land for sale out here. And so this Joseph Weimiller agreed to a mortgage. That was in August of 1817.
The first years in Zoar were very difficult. Those first 2 years, and especially the first winter, they had problems with wolves, they had problems finding food. The idea was that each individual person would be able to raise crops and sell excess crops to pay their land debt.
Embracing their Lutheran work ethic, the Zoarites soon became a self-sustaining economy with many novel innovations.
The garden house was the first greenhouse in the state of Ohio, and the community here made money by renting space out in the garden house for Clevelanders who needed a place to winter their hothouse plants.
In the village, everyone has their own jobs and chores to do.
Women were also required to work the fields alongside the men, and the children. If you could handle a hoe or a sickle, you worked. It didn't matter how old you were. So if you had a skill, if you were the shoemaker, then you made shoes for the entire village. If you were the baker, you made bread for the entire village. But then the shoemaker would get his bread and the baker would get his shoes.
During the Great Depression, the Sound Council started a restoration campaign to maintain and preserve the village.
And the Ohio Historical Society stepped in and started purchasing and restoring buildings in the village. They restored the garden house in the 1930s and the garden in the 1930s up until they restored the outside of the hotel in the 1990s.
The current incarnation of the village is comprised of all the original buildings from the 1800s.
We have several buildings here. We have a blacksmith shop that's been rebuilt, a wagon shop that's been rebuilt. This building that we're in is the Zoar store, and it was originally built in 1833 and has almost always been operated as a store. For a while it was living quarters. The hotel is not currently open to the public, but we're in the process of working on restoring the town hall, which is a museum of Zoar and also the Ohio and Erie Canal. The number 1 house, which holds furniture that the Zoar community built. And there's a kitchen, dining room, and magazine and laundry that are all connected together as one complex.
Among the buildings restored was the Zoar General Store.
This building was built in 1833, our visitor store. It was built as a dry goods store at the time for travelers coming through the village, and it's been a retail store of some kind ever since. And so we're carrying on that tradition of a retail store.
As small as it is, there's a lot of things to do around the village.
On an average weekend, they can expect to see the blacksmith demonstrating, maybe the tinsmith demonstrating. They can expect to do a little bit of shopping in the village.
What we try to do is showcase local artisans, local people that have special crafts or skills.
In Zoar Village, not only can you buy charming country crafts, visitors can learn to make them.
We have guided tours during the week in the summer, and a guide would take them from building to building and tell them more about the history of the village and point out some of the significant artifacts. On the weekends, we usually have several buildings open with volunteers in them, and they would be able to see a blacksmith demonstrating, the tinsmith demonstrating, maybe see us baking in the bakery or cooking in the kitchen.
The residents of Zoar are very passionate about keeping their story and history alive.
The overall goal of Historic Zoar Village is to preserve this village and also tell the story of the people who lived here. We've made a connection to the visitor and that they understand something new about Zoar and that you've helped them.
My name is Umar Faraz from the 11-Week Show. Now back to the studio.